Hi everyone, welcome back to the best recapped movie. Today's movie is an exciting action movie, with a brilliant performance by Denzel Washington, whose emotional scenes attract every viewer at times during the movie. Hostage situation in Mexico City becomes an inevitable incident, and Creasy, a former CIA agent, takes on the responsibility of protecting a little girl, which forces him to face challenges in doing so. Spoilers ahead. The film begins with a young man being taken hostage on the street in Latin America while walking with his girlfriend. By pressuring his parents, the kidnappers demanded a ransom from them to release him, and they freed him brutally by receiving a lot of money. Former CIA agent John Creasy visits his old friend Paul Rayburn at a party. They talk about their business over drinks, and Rayburn says he lives like a king. Creasy also explains that he came to see him to learn about his condition. Jordan Kalfus, the attorney for the Ramos family, is asking Samuel Ramos to hire a bodyguard before the kidnapping policy expires so he can activate the policy because he only has 60 days. Rayburn offers Creasy a job as a bodyguard and informs him that this job is only superficial and nothing threatens him. He says that his alcohol consumption is high and could cause trouble. Rayburn asks him to control it, explaining that he is supposed to be a bodyguard for the family of Samuel Ramos, who runs a car company in Mexico City. A little later, he and Samuel get to know each other, and seeing his file, Samuel realizes that he has an admirable history of participating in the war against terrorism, and after a little conversation, he asks him not to let anyone know about his drinking, including his wife. Samuel takes him to his house to see his wife, Lisa, who happens to like Creasy at first and accepts him as a bodyguard. He calls his daughter Pita to introduce her to Creasy, and after Lisa treats him to whiskey, asks Pita to show him to his room. After showing 5 bodyguards to Lisa, Samuel is surprised that she accepted him so quickly, and Lisa replies that he is a good American and thanks Samuel with a kiss. Pita shows him his room and says that the bird in the room was for his last bodyguard, which he forgot to take with him when he left, and after a little talk, he asks Pita to call him Creasy when saying goodbye. At bedtime, when Lisa comes to Pita, it is clear that she is as pleased with her new bodyguard as her mother, but she says Creasy seems sad to him, and she understands this. After Lisa leaves the room, it is revealed that she also names her teddy bear Creasy. On the other hand, Creasy continues to drink while a strange sadness that seems to be related to his past work is bothering him. Lisa also informs Samuel that their daughter likes the new bodyguard, but Samuel doesn't think it's strange because Pita likes everything. After that, it seems the sound of a bird in the room disturbs Creasy, so he decides to free him. The first day he takes Pita to school, she is fully aware of the recent hostages and talks about it, and Creasy is surprised that she knows more than she should. After taking her to school, Creasy meets Sister Anna, the head teacher of the school. After Pita leaves, she talks to Creasy about God with sentences from the Bible and realizes that he is familiar with these sentences, then leaves the school. He buys a famous music album from a store. Pita talks to him in the car on the way home and asks Creasy about the wound on his hand, and her constant questions upset him. When they reach an intersection and as the child labor approaches car, Creasy informs Pita that he is only his bodyguard and that she should not ask any more personal questions. His words upset Pita and made her angry, and she went to the back seat of the car. After that, when they get home, Lisa comes to him to make sure he doesn't need anything, and in this meeting, she finds out that Creasy is reading the Bible. She asks him to take his time and talk to him for 1 minute. She talks to him about what happened between him and Pita that day. Anyway, Creasy convinces her that he is here to protect her, not as a friend to her, and Lisa, after accepting this, tells him as she leaves that she will come with him tomorrow. At night, Creasy turns to excessive alcohol consumption, and the events of his past work make him decide to commit suicide by shooting himself, but the cartridge does not work. He calls Rayburn and asks whether he had a 9mm gun that didn't work. After they talk about it for a bit, Rayburn tells him that, as always, a bullet always tells the truth. It is raining increasingly, and Pita looks at him from the window. Tomorrow morning, while going to school, Creasy notices that a car is following them and asks Pita for a pen to write down the license plate of that car. Pita herself records the license plate number of that car in her notebook, and a little later, that car passes by them. He drives her to school, and on the day she has swimming lessons, he watches Pita practice closely and helps her get out of the pool at the end. When they return home, she mentions that there is a 150m swimming competition at school for the next 3 weeks, and Creasy tells her that she can handle it, and it looks like they reconciled. When the night comes, he follows the news of the child thieves in his room on TV, and on the other hand, Pita calls him and shows him the bird behind the window of his room. However, Creasy says that it would be better for him to be free, and then they say goodnight. Lisa and Samuel leave their daughter for a trip, and after saying goodbye to her, when Lisa gets into the car, she says that she hates leaving her alone like this. After they leave, Creasy can teach her how to swim. According to him, Pita has a weakness when diving, and the reason for that is the fear of the sound of the start of the competition, so they practice this move many times. Over time, the relationship between him and Pita deepens so that he feels her presence in his life and spends sweet moments with her. After some time, her parents return from a trip, and Samuel buys a dog for his daughter as a gift, and Pita is pleased to see him and names his dog Sam. As Creasy and Pita review her history lesson, Lisa listens from behind the door, and at this time, Pita asks him if he has a girlfriend, which makes Lisa laugh. Her swimming training continues until the day of the competition finally arrives, and Creasy gives Pita double confidence with encouraging words. Then Sister Anna comes to him and tells him that today he is her father, and this sentence creates a strange feeling in him. The competition starts, and finally, Pita manages to win first place at the end, which leads to her happiness, and Creasy hugs her. After that, they have a small party with Rayburn and his wife and have a good time together, and Pita decides to give Creasy a present, a small bear with a necklace inside. Pita says that St. Jude protects those who have given up on life, and Rayburn considers him worthy of this gift, and Creasy thanks her as he smiles. It seems that Pita has become the reason for Creasy to find hope in life, and this has made him stop drinking and study instead. While practicing golf, Samuel asks his daughter to go to music class instead of swimming, and Pita reluctantly agrees. Creasy takes her to the music class and, before arriving, explains to her that to get rid of the music class, she should use burp while teaching to insult him with this and discourage her teacher from teaching. When they arrive, Pita picks a flower for him by the door, and Creasy puts it in his pocket as a thank you. After she goes to class, Creasy waits for her nearby and hears her burp from outside, so he realizes that he is about to expel her. At this moment, he feels movements from the police and the suspicious movement of a car there, and Pita is also leaving from there. He realizes that the kidnappers are involved and asks Pita to run away, and suddenly, to his surprise, the police and the kidnappers shoot at him at the same time, and Creasy is wounded while also killing some of them. He falls to the ground with another shot from the police, and Pita runs to him as she cries. Suddenly, he is unconscious from the shooting, and the kidnappers immediately steal her away. The police find him guilty of murdering 2 police officers, and Mariana Garcia, as a reporter, considers the presence of the police officers at the scene of the kidnapping suspicious. AFI officer Miguel Manzano also accuses them of taking bribes in front of reporters. After that, Rayburn sneaks in while Creasy is lying on the hospital bed. Miguel also enters and helps him to save Creasy from the corrupt police and transfer him to another place. Fuentes, a police officer of kidnapping projects, and his team go to Samuel's house to investigate while Lisa cries for her daughter. Jordan also tells Samuel that everything will be fine and asks him to keep calm. The head of the kidnapping mafia calls Samuel and informs him that he will release his daughter only in exchange for $10 million. Jordan takes the phone from him, and they agree on how to pay. According to the agreement, first, Samuel, along with his driver, whom police officer Fuentes has accepted responsibility for, takes off his clothes while moving around a square to be identified. After getting off, he goes to a telephone station for the money delivery address. The head of the kidnappers asks him to put it in the trunk of a car and not to look behind him, but at this time, an attack happens by a group to steal the money, and in this incident, the nephew of the head of the kidnappers is killed. When Samuel reaches home, he calls him and tells Samuel that he betrayed him and that the fate of death will await his daughter. Hearing this, Lisa tries to make a new deal with him, but he refuses and says that it is too late for this. Then Lisa, angry at the ineffectiveness of the police's work, kicks them out of her house while she is afraid of her daughter's impending death. With the help of Miguel, Rayburn moves Creasy away from the well-equipped hospital and to a safe place to keep him safe from the corrupt police. After he is saved from death and regains some consciousness, Rayburn approaches him and informs him that the kidnappers consider it a betrayal after the money was stolen by a group when it was delivered to them, and Pita has been killed. Then Miguel shows Creasy some photos of the suspects to identify them, and he refuses to reveal the face of one of them even though he remembers it. Miguel explains to him that they are corrupt cops sponsored by a group called the Brotherhood. Rayburn takes him out after a little recovery and asks him to go to San Francisco, but Creasy says he doesn't want to go. They realize Mariana is following them, then they go to the crime scene, and Creasy remembers the bad memories of that day. Mariana joins him, and after a little talk, she explains to him that there is a Brotherhood group named La Hermandad, whose responsibility is to support the corrupt police, and that Pita's victimization is also due to the involvement of this group. She asks him to let her help him, and after she gives Creasy her contact number, they part ways. Along the way, he tells Rayburn he wants revenge on Pita, and Rayburn agrees to help him do it. Creasy goes to the Ramos family home and picks up the bullet that was not fired that night, then goes to Pita's room, and her absence upsets Creasy. He goes to her closet, checks her notebook, and realizes that Pita wrote down the number of the car that he chased them in the past, not just a digit. Lisa joined him, and Creasy said he returned to take the Bible because he couldn't find it. Then Lisa says she borrowed it to read, and Creasy also encourages her to continue doing this. After that, Lisa is still sad because of the loss of her daughter and cries and says that even though her daughter needed her, she had nothing to give her in return. Creasy says that he plans to kill everyone responsible for her murder. After hearing that, Lisa gives him Pita's teddy bear and kisses him, then leaves the room. Creasy finally finds the location of one of Pita's kidnappers, Jorge Gonzalez, with the help of Mariana through Miguel, with the numbers that Pita wrote down in his notebook. Through threats, he takes him to a high mountain to get a confession from him, and he threatens Jorge that if he doesn't answer his questions correctly, he will cut off his fingers one by one. Creasy finds out by pressuring him with torture that the head of this mafia is a person who was known by the nickname The Voice. Also, in the continuation of his torture, he reveals the place where the victims are guarded. He says that they are all kept in a nightclub and rave, and also reveals the guard, someone whose name is Butcher. After these events, he asks Creasy for a cigarette, and after he lights his cigarette, he kills Jorge by shooting him in the head and releasing him from the valley to fall. After him, Creasy goes to that nightclub to reach the leader of this group. He finds Butcher there, and by threatening him with a gun, he finds the people involved in this incident. At first, they deny, and Creasy kills Butcher and makes them talk. One of the kidnappers gives him a bank card and claims that their superior gives them $200 every week. He confesses that the person who stole the money on the day of the delivery was a policeman named Fuentes, and it turns out that he is a corrupt police. Only one of the group remains, who begs Creasy not to kill her and says that he doesn't know where the Voice is hiding, but she can hand over the girl whom this kidnapper also captured. He takes the hostage girl from that woman, and after leaving there, he destroys the building with an explosion. Then he calls Mariana and informs her about finding that girl named Camila and asks her to come to pick up her. Mariana quickly reaches him, and Creasy gives her the bank card and asks her to introduce the owner of that card using the relationship she has in the bank, and before saying goodbye, she hands over Camila, who was stolen. In the following, it seems that Miguel also intends to help Creasy, but first, he asks Rayburn to reveal the story between him and Pita. Rayburn informs him that Pita became his hope in his life, that they took that hope from him, and that they would wish to die if they knew what was waiting for them because Creasy's art is to kill. Now he is doing his masterpiece to shows. On the other hand, it seems there is a relationship between Mariana and Miguel. Mariana provides the necessary information to Creasy through Miguel, and so on. She again asks him to introduce the card owner's identity to her through his contacts at the bank. Then Creasy is seen on the street with a large bag in his hands, and it is clear that he is watching a house from afar. He enters the house and convinces the old owners that he will not harm them if they cooperate. In a clever move, he was aware of Fuentes' route, so he shot the car, escorting him with an RPG, and then entered the street, killing all his underlings and makes him go the way he wants to go. He is strangely tied to a car under a bridge without the police noticing, while he is even blindfolded. In the presence of Creasy, he admits that he is the head of the La Hermandad Brotherhood. Then Creasy calmly shows him a type of explosive system equipped with a receiver and a timer and says that he attached one of these bombs to his back. After he activates his watch and turns on the voice recorder, he gives him 5 minutes to confess, making Fuentes confess to all his crimes. Still, he says that when he stole the money, it was only $1.5 million. He informs Creasy that the theft of the rest of the money is the work of the Ramos family lawyer, Jordan Calfus. In the end, he does not spare him for all the crimes he has committed, and Fuentes is killed. Creasy goes to Jordan's residence but finds him dead in the pool with his head severed and goes to his home to investigate. He sees a bloody machete there and then uses the printer to extract information that shows that Samuel was involved in Pita's kidnapping, and with the help of Mariana, he finds out that he had joint financial accounts with Jordan. Then he decides to go to Samuel's house and meet him. By the way, Lisa also joins them. Samuel is in a situation where he has to confess. He says that according to the promises made by Jordan, Pita was supposed to watch cartoons all day during his hostage period and return early. He did this because of his father's debts and for the whole family, but it didn't happen, so he decided to kill Jordan as the main culprit. Lisa beats him after hearing these words because she can't believe that Samuel was involved in taking her daughter hostage, so she asks Creasy to kill him, or else she will do it herself. Creasy, who sees him regretting, gives him the bullet that didn't work for him that night and tells him that a bullet always tells the truth and leaves him after saying "I pray for you." Samuel takes the gun, shoots himself, and is killed. Miguel and Mariana find the owner of that card by inquiring about the account. The person known as the voice is Daniel Sanchez, and their photo will be printed in the newspapers tomorrow. With the help of his team, Miguel finds information about the address of his brother and his wife. He installs a hidden camera there, but when Mariana returns home at night, she is threatened by his brother and shot in the leg of her driver until the photo of Daniel Sanchez do not published in the newspaper tomorrow. Instead, Mariana gives all this information to Creasy as soon as she gets home. The next day, Creasy watches Daniel's brother, Aurelio, enter their house after one of Daniel's sons enters. He threatens Daniel's wife, Reina, not to do anything, and on the other hand Miguel also monitors them through cameras. Suddenly, Aurelio shoots him from behind and runs away. Creasy chases him while injured until he is stopped by an accident. Then he forces them into their house to confess Daniel's identity, and Reina, who has many children from Daniel and is, of course, pregnant, confesses to the identity of herself and his brother and, of course, Daniel. Creasy asks her to call Daniel, and she says they must do it on the roof, because there is no antenna. While the police are monitoring their call, when he calls Daniel, he proudly says, "How much money do you want?" Creasy gets angry and shoots his brother's hand, threatens his family with death, and says to Daniel, "I want you." A little later, Daniel calls again and offers to give the girl's life in exchange for his life. Confused, Creasy asks which girl. Daniel talks about Pita and explains that he is a businessman and that the dead girl will never do him any good. Creasy asks him to prove this and tell him what the Pita doll's name is, and a little later, he says it is Creasy. He realizes that Pita is alive, so he accepts the terms of the deal and tells him that he will hand over his brother in exchange for him. He leaves, and Miguel's team loses their call frequency. Then Creasy calls Lisa while holding Aurelio hostage and informs her that her daughter is alive and that the location is on a bridge. He tells her that the hostages are supposed to be exchanged. Lisa gets there and meets Creasy. He hands her the gun and says he's going to the bridge to get Pita and won't release him until Pita goes back down and promises her that everything will be alright. Then he goes to the bridge, and the kidnappers free Pita, and he is relieved. Pita also shouts his name and quickly runs towards him and hugs him. After talking for a bit, Creasy asks her to join her mother and go home, and he will also go home. Pita says "I love you," and Creasy sheds tears for her. After saying goodbye, she runs to her mother, and Lisa hugs her after she frees Aurelio. Now, Creasy, who the kidnappers pointed at him, goes to them to hand herself over to them, and they take him into the car while Pita sees him from a distance and cries. Along the way, Creasy gets closer to death due to the severity of his injuries, squeezes the necklace he took from Pita in his hands, and dies slowly. Based on a true story, he dies on December 16, 2003, and shortly after, Daniel Sanchez is killed by the police during his arrest, and the movie ends. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.